The following lesson is linked to Learning Outcome 3, Writing and Presenting, and it addresses the assessment standard that requires learners to demonstrate planning skills for writing for a specific purpose, audience, and context. Hi, I'm Charlotte, and we are focusing on writing skills. In the previous lesson, we looked at the first step in successful writing, the importance of paying attention to what the purpose of a particular piece of writing is, and who will read the finished product, the audience. We said that writing starts out like a road trip. First of all, you need to discover what the destination is. If we keep using this comparison, then you could say that today's lesson is about finding out how to get there. As you'll see, it's all about planning. Here are the outcomes for this lesson. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to organize your ideas and plan your writing. First of all, we asked some learners about whether they plan their writing, and if not, why?
I never plan.
I only plan if I'm doing an essay at home.
I plan for some essays like biology and history, but never for creative stuff.
No man, creative writing is supposed to flow, isn't it?
Planning is stupid. What am I supposed to do in an exam? There just isn't enough time.
Planning just means you have to do the whole thing twice. What is the point?
Well, I've got to say, they do make some good points, especially about having limited time and lots of pressure in an exam situation. And I agree that it seems silly to do your whole piece of writing twice over, but the truth is, it doesn't matter what type of writing you have to do. It could be a piece of creative writing, it could be a biology essay, it might be a letter of application for a job, or a university or college. It could even be a love letter. Whatever it might be, your writing will be greatly improved if you just spend a few minutes planning it. So I guess what we have to do is to find a way to do some planning that is quick, efficient and effective. So why is planning so important? Let's go back to comparing writing to a journey. This is Roel, and she's in Johannesburg. And she knows her destination is Cape Town. So she jumps in her car and starts driving. And she drives, and she drives. And after 1,800 kilometers, she stops. I don't know about you, but I've had exactly the same feeling in the past about writing. I know that I started off writing about the topic, but somehow I just got off the track. The next minute, time is up and I've written the right number of words, but I still haven't actually answered the question properly. And in the back of my mind, I know there are things that I wanted to say. The way to get around this very common problem is to plan effectively. Effective planning is like a good map. It doesn't mean writing everything out in full. Instead, it is an outline of the main stops along your route to your destination. Just like we need a map for a journey, we need a map for our writing to prevent us getting lost. But don't just take my word for it. Let's go and ask someone who makes their living out of writing effectively.
Hi, my name's Siobhan Erasmus. I'm a radio journalist with the SABC. I write radio stories of various lengths every single day of my life, almost. I think the challenge, when you write for radio, the challenge is to convey a message very simply and in a way that people get it the first time, because there's no luxury of going back and saying, oh, what did you say? Can you repeat that? Because radio is so fleeting. So when you write for radio, you have to make sure that every single word and every single idea is very simple and it's well chosen so that the message or the story you're trying to convey is related to the audience in such a simple way that they get it the first time. I also think with radio, You're also able to make people travel because you don't have pictures as a luxury, you only have words and you have to paint the picture. So when you use those words, you have to make absolutely sure that when you say flower and when you describe a flower, that it creates a picture in someone's mind. So I think what makes radio work for me is that every single word has power, and that if you use the right words, you can either have an incredibly powerful story and you can make people travel through that.
So Siobhan, when you have a juicy story to write, what is the first thing you do after you have gathered your information?
As a radio journalist, every day we constantly have to work by hourly deadlines. We're constantly getting new information. And every time you do that, you have to be very conscious that you want to make the listener connect. You want to you want to convey the information, but at the same time, you want it to be concise. You want it to be digestible, and you want people to understand why the story is important for them. One of the guiding principles I use when I write these stories is to say someone must be doing something active for a reason, and primarily I want people to connect to the story. So whether it is the president doing something, or the squatter, or the finance minister, they all must, everything they say or everything they're doing must connect to someone out there, because that's why we do the news, that's why news is important. The other thing we use is to say every story must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning is, you know, what's your story? Why should people care? The middle is your body. What gives the story meat? And the end is, you know, wrapping it up. Sealing the story is what we normally use in the newsroom. This is why it's important for you. This is what you have to look forward to. This is why you should care. And I think one of the most important things for radio journalists especially is, before even doing that story, is to understand themselves what that story is, to know why the story is important. And then when they tell that story, it's easy for people to understand, it's easy for people to relate to. And that's, yeah, radio journalism.
It just goes to show that you never get too experienced to plan. And if you think that teachers can be tough with a red pen, you should see what an editor can do. So we know that planning is important, but how do we find a quick method that doesn't mean writing everything twice? One very useful technique for making a map of the ideas and structure of a piece of writing is the mind map. Have a look at the mind map I have drawn for you. What do you notice about the mind map? It has the subject or topic of the essay in the middle of the page. Then there are lines coming from the center, like the branches of a tree, and each branch has its own branches. We have used different colors for each branch. The first branches are the main ideas about the topic, and the other branches are our supporting ideas. We can improve our writing style and content by making sure that our supporting ideas are well developed. They should be filled with relevant information. This may sound complicated, but it really isn't. Your mind map will help you to check that every main point you make is being backed up. What is important is to remember that the mind map is your guide to the big picture. Mind maps are about ideas, not detail. You shouldn't be filling it up with the actual words you will write, just the ideas. Let's take a look at how this could work. In the last lesson, we learned about the brainstorming process, where we gathered all our ideas as quickly as possible. Now we need to start putting these ideas into a logical order. Imagine that you are a young journalist who has been asked to report on a soccer match for the school newspaper. Let's put all that action into a mind map. First of all, we need to think about the main idea. This is the one thing that all the other ideas will come back to. In other words, whatever else you write about must add to this one central idea. In the example of the soccer match, what would you put in the circle for the main idea? What about Tembisa High School wins soccer tournament? Now, what about the main ideas? We could include things like, when was the match? Where was the match? Who played? How the winning goal was scored? And how people feel. Can you see that even though we are going to write about different aspects of the match, they will all be connected to the main idea? That is that Tembisa High School won. Can you see how the article is taking shape? We have the main ideas for the paragraphs, and now we can develop the ideas using examples, descriptions, and comparisons. Remember, not every supporting idea needs to have all three of these features, but one or two will add interest and information and make a much better piece of writing. Let's look at the first branch. When did the match happen? We could add things like, it happened last Saturday. And the weather was terrible. It was windy and rainy. Can you see that in this case, we will be expanding the idea by describing the weather on the day? This links us back to the main idea because we can see that even though the weather was so bad, the team still won. Next is, where was the match played? Perhaps it was played at the local sports ground. Last time we played there, we lost 10-2. Here we are referring to our original main idea that the Tembisa team won by comparing and contrasting this game to another that wasn't so successful. For this next idea, we can talk a bit about the teams. Who played? We could write about how good our players were and some of the stars. And maybe because we are fair and good journalists, we could write about the good players on the opposite team. Here we use examples to make a more rounded story. How the winning goal was scored. This is an opportunity for you to use your best descriptive language to recreate the atmosphere for people who might not have seen the match. So we could write about the cheering crowd. We could also include the action leading up to the goal or goals. And we could add something about the crowd's reaction to the goal. Now you need to wrap up your story. You can use the words of some of the people watching to make your point. Just remember, if you are going to quote someone, it must be in their actual words. Headmaster. We are very proud of our players. They are a credit to our school. Giants captain. Well done to Tembisa High School. They were the best team on the day. Tembisa captain. It feels wonderful to be at the top of the league again after a couple of bad years. The guys have worked hard and now we are seeing results. Let's take a look at the completed mind map. Well, that is looking very good. With all this information, we should have no problem writing an interesting and exciting story. But more importantly, when we come to writing the story in full, we will know exactly where we are headed. This technique of planning can be used for any type of writing you might need to do. It doesn't matter if it is a creative essay, an academic essay, a letter, or a report. Planning is the first and most important step. Now here is today's task that will give you some practice in making a mind map plan for your writing. Your task is to make a mind map to describe an event that has recently occurred at your school, and then write an article for the school newsletter about the event. Thanks for joining me today. In the next lesson, we will learn how to take these ideas from the mind map and turn them into sentences and paragraphs that will flow in a logical way.